If you were in the gifted program when you were younger, chances are you've probably heard of the gateway tapes. If you're anything like me, maybe you heard them in your adult years and all of a sudden memories of the gifted program came rushing back to your mind. You may have even gone on a wild goose chase like I have, uncovering your past and trying to answer questions like, why did I have strange psychic experiences as a kid, and why am I still experiencing strange psychic phenomenon now? And again, if you're anything like me, you may have never thought in a million years that your gifted kid experience would have ever had anything to do with some of the strange psychic experiences that you've encountered in your life. But when we think back to what we were actually doing in the gifted program, many of us remember listening to the gateway tapes or something similar, which were essentially different tones being played in each ear. The gateway tapes were actually designed to induce out-of-body experiences. So it makes sense why a lot of us gifted kids have these memories of flying, floating, astral traveling, astral projection, being outside of our bodies, or even encounters with UFOs or some kind of alien species. So what's really interesting is if you start to look into the gateway tapes as an adult and just some of the research at the Monroe Institute, the books that Robert Monroe, who was the creator of the gateway tapes, some of his out-of-body experiences, and the thousands, if not millions of experiences that people are having from the gateway tapes now in present day at the time that I'm making this video, it makes sense why a lot of the gifted kids actually have the same experiences that the tapes actually are meant to induce. So my question is, did we already have these gifted experiences or psychic experiences naturally, or were they actually induced by listening to the tapes at a young age? And maybe not just listening to the tapes, but what if, because the gateway tapes were such an experimental, technique that was being used on kids, a lot of us who have been looking into the gateway program have essentially come to the conclusion that GATE was one big experiment to kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? They're trying to find the gifted kids, the psychic kids. So my question again is, were we already psychic before we listened to the tapes? And that's why we were chosen to play the tapes for, so it would enhance those abilities? Or were we just regular kids with a high IQ who performed well on tests, and then they were like, hey, maybe these kids can handle their psychic centers being opened at a young age? Did they even know the long-term effects of opening the psychic channels at a young age? Because if we think back to the creation of the gateway tapes and Robert Monroe's experience with out-of-body experiences, well, if I'm not mistaken, he was doing his early research, I think it was in the, I want to say 50s and 60s, or maybe it was in the 60s and 70s, but it wasn't until the 80s that the CIA got a hold of his research, and they were studying the gateway tapes, and that's when they came out with the CIA's analysis and assessment of the gateway tapes, and then that document that everyone's kind of throwing around on the internet that says the universe as a hologram, and you're probably familiar with those documents. They have the picture of the mind like being split open like a plane. And I think in that document they also talk about, I'm not sure if they discuss remote viewing in it or out-of-body experiences, but essentially they're talking about how they discover that the universe is a hologram. So what does that mean exactly? It means that a good way of looking at it is that we exist in a plane where there is something that is a quantum field, or the collective consciousness, as Carl Jung described it. It's this field where every possibility exists. So if you're trying to visually represent that, or look at it visually, you can imagine a strip of film. And even though each frame of the film has a different picture on it, if you cut those frames apart, they still are on the film paper. So there's still a holographic image of the film on each film strip, even though it's a different part of the whole film. So in other words, I may be observing one thing, but that doesn't mean that something alternative that I'm not observing isn't existing simultaneously. So this is at least how I've grown to understand my own life and the universe that we're living in. I think that multiple truths can be true at one time. And I have come to realize in my own life that when I give something my active attention, it's more likely to or not more likely, it literally does deliver those things that I'm giving my attention to. So this can be true for your mindset, for your beliefs. So anything, I'll share a gang stalking experience because I feel like gang stalking is also a big thing that gifted kids talk about. They feel like they've been targeted for most of their lives. And for me, when I was going through this period of feeling like I was targeted, I kept noticing that I was targeted. I kept noticing that I was getting messages from blank profiles. I kept noticing that I was feeling watched, or weird things were happening at 3 or 4 a.m., or that there seemed to be like a network of people that seemed like they were after me. And it was like the further I went into this mentality that I was being gang stalked or that I was a targeted individual, the more experiences I would have that would keep proving to me that I was one, until after about a year or so of experiencing that and getting really freaked out by it and having nightmares in my dreams of being spiritually attacked and all this crazy stuff that I've talked about in other videos. If you want to check out any of my Hollywood videos, it's on my Hollywood and Secret Societies playlist. But, and my targeted individuals playlist, because I also have videos about that. More importantly, I have videos how to help you stop feeling like a targeted individual. Because like I said, for me, after about a year of experiencing those things happening to me, I realized that my attention to this concept was creating the very reality I didn't want to be living in. So I had to do a lot of cord cutting and energy cleansing. I had to block a ton of people. I had to do a lot of salt baths and cord cutting rituals in my own energetic space. So like literally calling in the energy of Archangel Michael to do cord cutting rituals with these people who I had given my conscious attention to. And then I started to affirm to myself every day that I am a sovereign being. I am in my own power. And these experiences only happen to me to remind me that I'm in control of my life experience and my auric field. So the only reason they had control temporarily is because I believed they did. I believed in the concept of a targeted individual or gang stalkers. I believed that there might be technology out there because there's patents for it, right? So why wouldn't I believe that? But in order to be affected by it, I had to believe that I can be affected by it. So I had to convince myself that I couldn't be affected by it, and literally convincing myself that I couldn't be affected by it made me not become affected by it. So even if it is happening to me, then it's might as well not be happening to me because I'm not noticing it and it doesn't affect my life. I don't feel emotionally distraught by any kind of targeting or gang stalking anymore because I truly believe in my sovereignty and my power as a spiritual being to create my reality through my conscious attention. So essentially, this is what I think the Gateway Tapes was trying to explain to us. However, if you look at what has happened to a lot of gifted kids, it seems like a lot of gifted kids have gone down a path of substance abuse and feeling like they're targeted, like they're being gang stalked, or they start to go down these crazy rabbit holes about the nature of the universe, and sometimes it can be religious teachings that have been kind of distorted or interpreted in a fear-based sense. I've even heard people talk about Narcissism and how we live on a prison planet and how they've had experience with crazy demonic entities and they're convinced that that entity has all the power in the universe. So that is a scary thought train to go down, and that is one of the negative side effects of opening somebody's spiritual channel before they're really ready. And the other thing that is really important to understand that is that if you are a child who's had early childhood trauma, like before you were an infant, like birthing trauma, umbilical cord around your neck, early childhood surgery, caretakers that weren't there for you, any kind of SA or ritualistic abuse as a child, any kind of injury or surgery as a child. Like a lot of things can be traumatic, whether it's a big T or a little t, but a lot of us had trauma as a kid long before we ever were in a gifted program. So what happens when you take these kids who have been traumatized already? So as infants and as very young children, they have negative beliefs about the world already, and they already don't trust adults because maybe they had a caretaker fail them. Maybe they didn't, maybe they saw some scary movies on TV and it implanted some negative things in their psyche. What happens when you play those kids the gateway tapes, which open your psychic channels? However, because those kids have been exposed to early childhood trauma and the negative side of life, doesn't that align them with the negative frequencies of the universe? And it aligns them with negative belief systems of the universe already. So now, because that's their main area of focus or their main vibrational energy that they're putting out, when they open the channel, like when something like the gateway tapes opens the channel for them and it teaches you to get outside of your body, even if it's giving you ways to protect yourself, that's something that you have to do for a long time. And I don't know Robert Monroe's history. I don't know if he's ever had any kind of abuse in his past or his childhood or anything. He could have naturally been one of those people who didn't have a very abusive past, and that maybe was the thing that allowed him to travel outside of his body and have more neutral or positive experiences. Maybe he did have childhood trauma that I don't know about, and I don't know enough about his story or his experiences to really talk about his personal experiences in depth. But I'm just, saying something to think about. Because for a person with a lot of childhood trauma, and I will use myself as an example as somebody who had a lot of unprocessed trauma and somebody who was in the gifted program, somebody who remembers listening to the Gateway tapes. I can't say for certain whether it was the Gateway tapes because I don't have any physical evidence or any report cards or any school records or anything that says, yes, you for sure listened to the Gateway tapes. And it is highly possible that some of what I recognize in Robert Monroe's Gateway tapes could be a similar voice narrator doing a similar type of guided meditation or similar visualization exercise or meditation, which was probably pretty common in the 80s and 90s because they were more, they had just started doing, I don't know if they just started doing nap time, but I remember nap time being a thing when we were growing up, especially in the gifted program. So they would have us visualize stuff during nap time, or they would just try to manage the energy of a classroom and provide stress reduction techniques for kids. So the other thing though that can happen when kids are in altered states of consciousness through nap time is hypnotic suggestions. So if you watch movies right after that, that implants ideas and suggestions into your head. So if you're watching scary movies, I don't exactly remember what movies we watched in childhood, but if they're playing a lot of movies, like one that comes to mind is like The Dark Crystal. So it's like these heroes' journey, battle between good and evil. Even things like Star Wars, which is a big one for a lot of kids, the evil forces and the light forces. It still implants this idea of good and evil and bad entities and good entities. So that's something to be mindful about when it comes to kind of like thinking back to why we believe life is the way that it is, or why we have and why we attract certain experiences in our life. So all of that to say, somebody with a negative experience of life, a negative traumatic childhood, could have listened to something like the Gateway tapes that open their psychic channels, and now all of a sudden they're outside of their body. They really don't know how to control it. They come to this world through the veil of amnesia, so they don't remember who they are as a creator. They don't remember that they are literally a reflection of love. So they are only remembering the fear-based teachings that they've learned and that they've absorbed from their family, not to mention the DNA memory, the blood memory we absorb from our family. So even if something wasn't traumatic in our childhood, if we're born into a family with a lot of trauma, so I'm thinking specific like military or Freemason families, because there may be a lot of trauma in those bloodlines, especially since Freemasonry is associated with elite members of society, and military has a ton of trauma because you've got people literally fighting for their lives and being brainwashed by boot camp and stuff. Like literally you have to be brainwashed in order to be able to go out and fight a war. So there's a lot of negative trauma associated with those bloodlines. So if you're a Gates kid, you're already born into these bloodlines, and we're kind of in a way limited by our bloodlines. However, I do think a lot of us have also been curse breakers. So we may have been born into these, I got children now, but we may have been born into these family lines that have a lot of trauma. And I still have this theory that a lot of the Gate kids are actually indigo souls, or we're part of the 3 waves of volunteers that Dolores Cannon talks about. Crazy chills again. But I think a lot of us have been born specifically into these bloodline families. A lot of us are Rh negative. We are literally insane chills, by the way, as I'm saying all this, but we're literally the like cog that broke the machine. We are Rh negative blood. Not all of us, but a lot of us are. And that's literally a genetic mutation. It like skips around the family members and then boom, there's a Rh negative. It means you're more, I haven't extensively done research on Rh negative because I haven't been able to find a lot of research on it. But some of the research I have found about Rh negative people is that a lot of diseases they're actually more immune to. I think their blood is stickier. I don't exactly know what that means. But I think something about our blood type makes us more immune to a lot of diseases, and could even be a reason why a lot of us have never broken a bone. Why a lot of us have felt spiritually protected. And there's a lot of people that think that Rh negative blood also has to do with the hybrid agenda. So the other question I have asked in my mind is like, well, was I born with Rh negative blood? Were we born with it? Or did we get early childhood vaccinations like the day that we were in the hospital and some of us turned negative? I have no idea. That's a pretty far-fetched theory. I'm just throwing that out there. And if anyone wants to comment on that, I'd be so curious to see what you guys think and if there's any connection or if this is something that we were all just born with. But all that to say, a lot of us are generational curse breakers. So those of us who have had those experiences with negative entities, with targeting, with gang stalking, with these really traumatic, scary experiences, with childhood trauma, ritualistic abuse, the list goes on and on. All of us who have had the really dark experiences of gate, I believe we are the strongest souls, because if you think about what you're doing here as a generational curse breaker and how energy works and how Earth is a planet of duality and polarities. And in order to be a creator and to really make something happen, this is what a lot of the occult societies believe in. They do chaos magic, which means to them, they believe that something chaotic has to happen. And then they take all that negative chaotic energy and then they birth something new. So something bad has to happen and push us into lower states of consciousness, or like really wake something up inside of us or bring something to light through the contrast and through the chaos. Another way of viewing it is like you're pulling the slingshot all the way back, and the further back you pull, the more tension there is. So instead of opening one portal right here, now when you're doing like chaos magic or you're just a generational curse breaker with a lot of trauma, the more tension you have, the more opportunity you have for growth and expansion. So if you are somebody who's suffered from a lot of really deep trauma, just know that you, more than anyone, have really strong potential to be on the really positive, higher frequency end of that energy. So you've got a lot of innate power to really transform things for the benefit of a lot of people here once you learn how to transmute that energy. So let's get back to just some of the experiences that people have had on the tapes. One of the things that really comes to mind a lot is I've had a couple interactions with people from my channel who have are really certain about this idea that there's like one demiurge or whatever, one negative evil god that runs the planet. And then there's a lot of religious ideas and beliefs out there like we're trapped on a prison planet, or Satan rules everything and we can't escape. This is an incarnation trap. We can't get out of here. So there's a lot of really negative beliefs. And in my experience, when I was limited by beliefs like that in my younger years, before I really alchemized my trauma and healed from it, I think I had a lot of things that were keeping me in those lower states of consciousness that were making me a vibrational match to certain experiences. And that one of the biggest ones is that I was self-medicating with substances like alcohol, tobacco, Mary Jane, specifically, those are my main three vices, and then junk food and emotional eating and stuff like that. And also using relationships as a crutch and really kind of addicted to external validation because I didn't feel self-love inside. So I felt like I needed to find external validation from the people that I dated. And if I didn't have a boyfriend or a guy interested in me, I would feel very insecure about myself and lonely. And that's a whole different conversation. I was going to say, I was also felt probably lonely and misunderstood because of my gate program experiences that I had no idea about back there, because I think my psychic channel has been open for a really long time. And when I was younger, I didn't know how to regulate that, hence why I was attracted to self-medication through alcohol and MJ. But when you think about what you're doing when you're drinking a lot of alcohol, people are literally drinking to black out. So what happens when you're blacking out? You don't consciously remember what you're doing, but your body is doing stuff. Your body is cheating on your wife. Your body is gambling. Your body's driving behind the wheel of a car and you don't remember how you got home. You're blacked out. So what's controlling your body? Is an entity or energy or something outside of you controlling your body? So I think that when we are reaching for a drink or a substance and we're doing it because we're trying to regulate, so we're depressed and we're reaching for that thing because we want to feel better. Because why do people get drunk in the first place? They get drunk because they want to have fun, because they're not having fun on their own, right? We need something external. But when you need something external to have fun, it creates an addiction and an attachment to that substance. And then when you're drinking so much of it that you're literally blacking out, what's it doing? It's opening up your body to these entities that live inside of you, because the gateway tapes were all about an internal experience. And then a lot of people are talking about NASA, and NASA is all about space exploration. What is out there? does NASA exist to distract us from the fact that all of those spatial experiences are actually inside of us? And space, what we call space, is actually kind of the macrocosm to the microcosm that is inside of us. And this is just a theory I have. I mean, I could be totally wrong about that. That's just something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, is what if interdimensional traveling is happening on the inside? And I really did think it does, especially from what we've discovered with the gateway tapes, how people have used the gateway tapes as a tool to literally travel outside of their body and go to other places. But if you really think about it, even if you are traveling outside of your body, it's the mind and the soul that is controlling these experiences. So you're still controlling it essentially from your soul essence on the inside, but then we're still limited by our mind and our beliefs. So if we have a lot of negative beliefs, those beliefs get stuck as thought forms and entities either inside our body from trauma that we're holding on to somatically, or they get stuck in frequencies that are surrounding us through thought waves, through the people we attract, because we're putting negative vibrations and frequencies out there. So we attract negative people, victim-minded people into our experience because that's what we're putting out there. So when that's our, I guess, regular frequency, you can still, I'm sure, have these out-of-body experiences, but you don't understand, you may not know that you're protected. You may be more drawn to the experiences with negative entities because they recognize your fear and lower vibrational energy, and then they feed on that. So you may be a person with a very open psychic channel, but you're not emotionally regulated. You've got a lot of addictions. You've got a lot of fear-based programming. And now all of a sudden, these entities are attacking you through sleep paralysis, through gangstalking, through targeted individual type experiences that people are having. So if you're a person like that, one of the best ways to get out of that is to expand your mind when it comes to understanding who you are as a spiritual being. So books that really helped me understand that I'm way more than my body are books like The Secret, teachers like Abraham Hicks and Bashar, who teach you all about vibrational frequency and law of attraction. You are literally creating reality with your thoughts. Everything that exists around us, everything in this room was born because of a thought. Somebody followed through on a thought or an idea that they had to make that mask, to make that t-shirt, to design that poster, to make that mask, or to create the shelf behind me, or the heater, or whatever I'm literally sitting in, the technology that I'm speaking to you from. These were all ideas. So thoughts become things, and they only become things when we give it our conscious attention and we keep like acting in accordance with what we're thinking about. So all of that to say, again, if you're a person that's attracting these like negative entity type experiences in the astral realm, which could very well be the case if you're a Gates kid, a targeted individual, and if you are in the Gate program, and remember hearing the gateway tapes. Again, when your psychic channel is opened, when you've had childhood trauma, or you don't really understand the nature of who you are, so somebody hasn't taught you, you are a vibrational being. Your frequency matters, your thoughts matter, your feelings matter. And then you're born into this world where you're literally given junk food, and that's normal. Cafeteria food is literally junk food. There's literally in America like red dye 40 and yellow dye 40 and all this stuff that is literally shown to cause Alzheimer's and Asperger's and just mental stuff that is being caused by the chemical stuff in our food. So I remember a lot of studies too with kids who had ADHD, and a lot of those studies were linking ADHD with your stomach, which is also linked to all kinds of neurodivergence and mental health, like depression, anxiety is directly linked to your gut. And then in those early studies, and probably studies that are still going on today, ADHD is also linked to too much sugar and your diet. So think of all these kids who are in elementary school who are just eating their Cheerios every day, or they're not their Cheerios, they're Frosted Flakes and Count Chocula and all the cereals that it was shoved in our faces on the TV when we were kids, watching Saturday morning cartoons and Nickelodeon and all those things. Which, by the way, Nickelodeon, the origin of the word nickel is devil. So it was actually originated from the word Kupfer nickel, which is a German word for copper devil. I think there's like a legend about a copper devil or something. So Kupfer is copper, and then nickel is devil. So they took nickel, devil, Odeon, a playhouse or acting house or something. So devil Playhouse, right? And that's what we were watching as kids. So where did that originate from? Could it have anything to do with Hollywood, secret societies, or Masonry, or anything like that? The brotherhoods that are running the world that the DODs associated with Hollywood and CIAs associated with Hollywood, and could they have had a hand in the programming of young children, which could also keep us in certain frequencies. And not to mention like the creepy stuff that we saw with like Ariana Grande and Amanda Bynes and the Nickelodeon kids that we grew up watching who had horrible trauma. So to think that we weren't watching those characters, and even if we didn't know about the abuse that was happening, we're still watching them and we're absorbing their energy through the TV. We're connecting with them. So are we connecting with the trauma that, you know, our psychic channels are open? So could we have intuitively picked up on some trauma that was happening behind the scenes? I don't know, but I'll use my gate group as an example. We have a small gate group that I'm a part of right now, and we were practicing psychic exercises the other day, and remote viewing exercises in person. There's like 6 of us, and all of our signals kept getting crossed with each other. It was like one person would be thinking about that and then wanting to change their answer, and then another person from the group would pick up from that. And it wasn't just one person we were picking up on different people from the group. And then another thing that was happening in my remote viewing group is that we were looking at an object in our room and trying to use our intuition to discern like what object is that person looking at. But what was happening is that the people were picking up on other aspects in the room. So like a painting that was on the wall or something that was hidden in the closet behind the object somebody was staring at. So how does that apply to the things that we're watching on TV and the actors and actresses who are vessels for what we're watching? So that's just something to think about, something that I've been thinking about. And as kids, just growing up in America, just between our food and the television that we're watching, and then the weird stuff they're having us do in class, especially if you're in the gifted program and they're pulling you out to go stick you in a dark trailer with no sound and no windows, and then they're making you listen to these out-of-body tapes, and then they're sending you to the science fair and asking you to decode alien stuff and Morse code and all the things that they had us doing in the gifted program. Like, all of this stuff is having a lasting impression on your psyche, and unfortunately, everything outside of us, it's all coming to a head in recent years, like with Hollywood and all kinds of programming that we have largely been influenced by satanic influences. So all of that to say, that has absolutely, I think, opened us up to more negative psychic experiences, versus what if we were a generation of kids that grew up very connected to nature. We didn't have these screens and tablets that we were watching other people live their lives on. We only had a small community of people that we relied on, that we connected with, that we loved, that we spent time with. We had a connection to the earth because we were putting our hands in the dirt and communicating with the microbiomes of the soil. We were communicating with the animals, who are literally reflections of spirits, or could even be non-human entities manifesting as animals that we connect with. What if we had grown up in spaces where we were taught how to meditate at a young age, where we were taught to self-regulate at a young age, where we didn't have access to poisonous junk food and poison that they're putting in our cereals and our food, and we are not being spoon-fed sugar at every meal with sugary drinks, and we weren't watching satanic stuff on TV, and it was just a much different environment. What if? Would our astral experiences have been a lot different? Was this all intentional? So they would open our psychic channels, bombard our minds and our energy systems and our nervous systems with negative frequencies. So now all of us who have those psychic channels open, all we're able to vibrationally connect with are the darker entities, the negative entities, these fear-based beliefs that Earth is a prison planet and the demigod controls everything and there's no escaping Satan and we can't beat him. So I guess all of that to say, I wanted to make this video today just to give you something to think about, and to help a lot of us who have been exposed to the gateway tapes and just the satanic systems in our nation, to give us something to think about and kind of ask and explore, how do we get out of those negative experiences? How do we have more positive experiences? How do we connect to angels and light entities? Well, I think a lot of us have slowly started to figure out how to do that. I know for me, I started having a spiritual awakening about 10 years ago, and it started with me meditating and quitting alcohol. And from quitting alcohol, I joined a 12-step community group where I started to connect with other people who had suffered from trauma and addiction. So connecting with their energy fields was such a different experience than connecting with people I worked with, because when I had community that was based on who I worked with. We were only community because we had a job, but that job was usually supporting some kind of elitist corporation that's probably not doing really great things on the planet. But we would bond in the way like, oh, I hate my job. Oh, it's Monday again. Oh, Wednesday. The week is dragging on. Let's go get happy hour after work. We don't really like our job. We wish we had more time off and more time spent with our family. So that's what your community becomes, or at least it did for me. And then working in the restaurant industry is where my addiction escalated, because then my community was all about like escapism and like, yeah, we're not working for the man. We're not working a 9 to 5, but instead we're going to party our A's, our I can't say that word on YouTube, but we're going to party our butts off and we're going to go crazy and then destroy our brain and destroy our minds and make ourselves more depressed and more anxious and have more mental illness problems, and then not do anything about the negative elite people who are running the world and in charge of brainwashing the children of the nation. So what I found when I did a 12-step program is that I was with other people who cared about self-improvement. They cared about being better humans. They wanted to take radical responsibility for their lives. They were sharing truth in meetings. They weren't ashamed to share what happened to them, but they also weren't necessarily word vomiting it to you with no intentions of changing, because somebody who's just word dumping their trauma on you and trauma dumping with no intention to change or take any kind of advice is an energy vampire, versus somebody who is sharing, even though it may feel like trauma dumping. If that person is open and willing to change and they're taking active steps to change, that is a different energy than the energy vampire who's literally just taking from you. This is a person who genuinely needs help. So if you provide help to that person, it helps both people. It helps that person awaken and grow, and it helps you feel better because you're tapped into some kind of purpose helping a person. So that's just another thing to think about. A lot of people who have a lot of trauma, they have no intentions of changing, and they end up becoming energy vampires. And it sucks because it's like, I can see why a lot of these people are traumatized because they've had terrible things happen to them. But as an empath, you really have to be discerning about who you share your energy with. And the last thing, like what I've learned over the years, is trying to cater too much to people who are like trauma dumping on me and who are like really depressed and paranoid and just like sick, but they have no intentions of helping themselves, and they've got a yeah but attitude for everything, and they want to hear themselves talk, but they don't want to listen to anyone, and they want to tell you about their theories, but they don't have, they shoot down everything else that you say. They're married to their addictions. They don't see that it's affecting them in a negative way or anything. They think that the rules don't apply to them, etc. That energy is extremely draining to be around, and if you've dealt with those kind of people long enough, you start to recognize them. It's called pattern recognition, and your body will start to recognize that energy. So the other thing, if you're an empathic person who has a wide open spiritual channel, probably because you were in the GATE program, right? But the other thing that can happen is that your nervous system is used to these energy vampire types or these narcissists. So you go through your life feeling like you owe them something, like you have to fix them. And then for me, it wasn't until I repeated that pattern enough times that I was like, oh, my body is just having a memory. That's why I feel attraction to these types of people. That's why I feel a obligation to help them, because I grew up with that kind of family dynamic, and that was part of my trauma story, where you're the empath kind of feeding the narcissist. But then there's also a lot of people who are narcissistic empaths, which I was also for a period of time. And what I mean by narcissistic empath is that your emotions get so overwhelming that you can't see beyond them. You have no idea how your emotional life or frequency is affecting the people around you, because you're so absorbed by those emotions. And that's what I was. I had such heavy emotions. I was in such deep shame and guilt and trauma from what happened to me as a kid that I feel like bad for the people I was interacting with. I didn't know any better, but I was an energy vampire to them. So it wasn't until I entered a 12-step program that I was like, oh, okay, I'm both a student and a teacher. I'm learning from people who were just like me at one point, but they learned from other people and they got better. They stopped with the alcohol and the substance abuse, which is going to heal your physical body, which is also going to have an impact on your mind and your spirit and your emotions, because it's all connected. I did a whole video about that. I think the title was called Reclaim Your Spirit. And it's something about the targeted gifted kid. It's one of my last videos before this. So I highly recommend watching that if you're looking to heal your nervous system after what the GATE program did to you and after being a targeted individual. I'm not a doctor or anything, but those were just things that helped me. It's intentional community, being surrounded by people who are putting spiritual growth at the heart and center of everything they do. Not money, not profit, not fame, not their job or anything like that. Spiritual growth. So we have to have communities that are centered on spiritual growth and spiritual connection. So that will definitely heal your nervous system and will also retrain your brain to think higher frequency, higher vibrational thoughts, and to expand your mind to believe that more things are possible in this world. Because if you're only surrounded by negative people in your lifetime, you're only watching what they feed you on TV, negative stuff that you're listening to, that you're watching to, then your beliefs about the world are most likely to be negative. So the best formula for really tapping into your true psychic potential, now that your channels have been opened from these gateway tapes and these experiences, you want to look for the people who you feel vibrational resonance with, as in you want to be like them. You want something that they have. It feels good to be around them. You feel uplifted after you watch their content or after you connect with them. You feel happy. You feel uplifted. You feel lighter. And the best thing to do is copy what those people did. So that is how I healed myself. That is how I went from having sleep paralysis experiences and nightmares and reoccurring nightmares and negative out-of-body experiences to all of a sudden flipping the switch to now I'm a conscious remote viewer. I work with clients doing conscious remote viewing sessions, and I have been doing this stuff since 2017. I also use tarot cards as a medium during my remote viewing sessions, and I've learned how to control that gift and that ability within myself. So now the only time I've ever had nightmares is when I relapsed on Mary Jane, surprise, surprise, or when I was under really intense periods of stress. And that's only happened a handful of times within the last 10 years. So I've become really good at mastering my energy and thus mastering my astral experiences. So I have a ton of tools. I've got a whole program, my ESP development course, which is at the link in the description of every video. I literally made that course based on the process that I went through to heal my trauma, to heal my vibrational energy, to understand my psychic gifts so I could use them in a positive way and not in a negative way, and not let them control me. Because for a lot of people, your psychic gifts are controlling you. You're allowing those spiritual attacks to control you. You're a victim of the sleep paralysis. And a lot of people have no idea that it's connected to the trauma that is held in your body, that Kundalini energy will come in and activate, which I explain all about in my psychic development course. And a lot of us have no idea that our daily habits are also having an effect on our energy field, our thoughts, our vibration, our spiritual energy, and our psychic experiences. So if you're interested in breaking free from the negative psychic experiences and really learning how to tap into your power, I highly recommend checking out my ESP development course that even includes a guided meditation for you to learn how to remote view and become, sorry, there's a fly in here, but to become more in conscious control of your experiences. And then I also have a 21-day habits tracker and belief exploration worksheet. It's called Break the Cycle. It's $22.22. So I can't think of a more affordable entry price for you to actually get actionable steps that will help you uncover or recover from your trauma so you can clear out this negative energy and these negative energy imprints in your body. So that's what that worksheet is designed to do. It's like 60 pages. So it's a 21-day commitment. Just fill that out every single day, and you will start to see the patterns that are, and the beliefs that are holding you back from living your best life and being in conscious control of your energy and your experiences. And then last but not least, I have opportunities to work with me one-on-one through readings, through astrology, through human design, and through remote viewing tarot sessions. So if you're interested in any of that, please reach out to me via Instagram or TikTok, or check out the booking link in the description of every video. I also have a women's cohort coming up. This is going to be the most intensive experience that I offer. This is a month-long experience that's going to be starting on the full moon. It's $555. It is priced according to the access that you will get from me and from the experience. The goal of that program is to introduce you to astrology, to human design, and to do a couple of tarot readings within the group that will help provide clarity to you, which will aid in your transformation. And then we're also using the moon cycles as part of the transformation itself. And then we're also using the element of community and groupthink to help each other heal. So this is going to be a intentional group, a small group. So if you're interested in being a part of that, then also comments me in the comments, and I'll send you the link to apply. So thanks for watching this video, and thanks for being a part of this channel, and check out those links, and I'll see you guys in the next one.